Good morning, members, officers and those members of the public, and welcome to the meeting of the City of London Corporation's Port Health and Environmental Services Committee, today, Tuesday, the 3rd of March 2026 at the Guildhall. The public element of today's meeting is being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting and will be retained for up to 1 municipal year. At item 1, we have received apologies from George Abrahams, Alderman Hughes Penny, Alderman Salusia, Stuart Thompson, Simon Duckworth, Giles Chilson and Dawn Frampton, as well as Chris Bowden.
Thank you. And we've also had notification from Hugh Selker and the Chief Commoner that they may need to leave the meeting early. Are there any other apologies that people have? Yeah, so Dawn Frampton is online, as in Marianne Fredericks. Yeah. Okay, so not seeing any more apologies, we move to item 2, which is member declarations under the Code of Conduct. Are there any declarations not already disclosed? Not seeing any. We'll move to item number 3, which is the minutes of the meeting on the 20th of January, which are to approve. They start on page 5. Are there any? I'll take matters of accuracy and matters arising together. Anything on page 5? Page 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, not seeing any matters arising. Are they agreed as a true record? Thank you very much. And that takes us to item number 4 on page 13, which is a decision item, statutory biodiversity report, and Ben Bishop to introduce for us. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. So the report and appendix presented to members is the report required of the City Corporation's statutory biodiversity duty. The Environment Act amended acts requiring public authorities in England to act to conserve and enhance biodiversity, and following that, the biodiversity reporting regulations came into force in 2023, requiring local and local planning authorities to produce a report every 5 years relevant to their activities, and this is the first report in that series. Members of the Port Health and Environmental Services Committee are asked to approve the contents of the report relevant to their committee's terms of reference. This includes strategic and operational roles and responsibilities, including waste management, circular economy, environmental health services for the square mile, management of the City of London and cemetery and crematorium. And on a voluntary basis, the report also presents key information on public roles not subject to the duty, such as the London Port Health Authority, Animal Health and Welfare Service, recognising that these services are important to maintaining biosecurity, protecting people and nature. The approach taken to producing this report was to recognise that this is an important strategic coordination for nature, and this voluntary information has been supplied to address that. In summary, members of the Port Health and Environmental Services Committee are asked to approve the contents relevant to their terms of reference and to approve delegated authority of the Executive Director of Environment to approve any further amendments to Appendix 1 in consultation with the Chair. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Quite a detailed report here. Very large sections of it do relate to our statutory functions, and I would ask members to restrict themselves to those areas. The report is for decision. It is then going on to planning and transportation. There are some aspects of this which relate to planning and transportation for decision, and it's also going on to the Natural Environment Board and the various large open spaces you can see there. So any questions or comments on this report, please? I think, John, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My question is about the lighting strategy. It's mentioned in the report several times, but it seems to limit itself to the lighting strategy as regards street lighting. But we have a broader lighting strategy which has been signed off but not adopted by the corporation. Now, I know this is periphery to this, but it is mentioned in this document, so it's an opportunity to for me to bring it up again, that we have a lighting strategy which involves some compulsory work and some volunteer work on buildings that are not, which were been approved before the lighting strategy was adapted. So there was going to be like a voluntary code, and that hasn't happened yet because the corporation realised that to adopt it, it would incur some cost itself, and so they've been hesitant to do anything about it, and that's a little bit embarrassing. And so I see in this document another reason to sort of prod the process to get this done. Thank you.
Okay, if I can go back to Ben on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the lighting strategy for streetlights has been referenced in this document. The purpose of the report is to highlight what has been done within the 3 years of the reporting regulations. So anything that hasn't necessarily been achieved hasn't been included, but will, once achieved, be included in the next 5-year reporting period. Thank you.
So I think this is an opportunity to say in the document or somewhere that's only part of the lighting. There's also an awful lot of lighting associated with commercial buildings, which we have a strategy to reduce, but haven't done so because it turned out that it would cost us money, which is a little bit counterintuitive considering 26% of the energy cost in the square mile are for lights. Thank you.
Marianne Fredericks.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me if I've misunderstood this. And forgive me if it crosses over with planning, but I noticed there's a lot of reference to riverside strategies and riverside. But I wondered about the biodiversity and improving biodiversity on the river foreshore and our riversides. We've got Port Health and we support Thames 21, who do a lot of work biodiversity and enhancing our rivers across London and the South East. So I just wondered whether or not that's a chapter missing, and is that a trick we're missing? Should we be doing more to improve the biodiversity of our rivers, which are our life force? Chair.
Sorry, the Chief Commoner.
Thank you. Not on that, although I have an interest. Obviously, we have foreshore in Dowgate too, which would interest me. What I'd like to know is, and maybe I've missed it in here, partnerships with our constituents where they have office buildings, and we have a lot of green roofs, particularly in Dowgate and probably across the city. Where do we offer help with them, or monitor what they're doing and encourage them to what they're doing from a biodiversity point of view?
Okay, I'll come back to Ben Bishop in a minute, but actually just one point on encouraging business to get involved in biodiversity initiatives. That's actually one of the key themes of the Clean City Awards now, and so we do encourage companies, businesses to join that scheme and to put in awards entries. So at the ceremony a few weeks ago, that was very much one of the key themes. But if I can go back to you, Ben, I don't know if you want to add anything else about the lighting, and then Marianne's question about the river and the foreshore, and the Chief Commoner's point about biodiversity on rooftops and buildings.
Thank you, Chair. No further comments on lighting, but definitely note that it's something to take forward in future reporting. In terms of the river foreshore, there is reference to some biodiversity net gain work that is covered in that section of the report. And yes, the Riverside strategy is obviously a key element of how we might achieve biodiversity improvements in the square mile. So I need to continue to review that. And then finally, on the point around businesses and engagement, it is a key action within the Biodiversity Action Plan that is currently running until the end of this year to raise awareness and engagement. And that is something that is delivered through the Biodiversity Partnership Group, which is referenced in this report. But note again, this work is all evolving and needs to continue to evolve to ensure that wider engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Layla Bolton.
I'd like to know a bit more about the 419 planning permissions that were exempt from the biodiversity requirement against the 2 that did meet that requirement. I'd also like to know what exactly needs to go to planning and transportation for decision that the chair mentioned at the beginning. Thank you.
Ben?
Yes, happy to take that question, Chair. So on the point around biodiversity net gain, currently the City Plan 2040 is in the process of being adopted, and as such, developments within the square mile often meet what's called the de minimis, which is a threshold set by the government to achieve biodiversity net gain. So habitats on site do not reach that threshold. And then in terms of planning and transportation, a lot of the responsibilities in meeting biodiversity net gain duties sit with that committee and with that division. So in terms of setting policies within the city plan to be adopted to ensure that the square mile and the city corporation are delivering biodiversity through the planning process. Thank you.
Did you want to come back on that, Layla?
Yeah, so I'm struggling to understand what exactly we're being asked to approve if very significant amounts of decision making related to this report actually go to another committee. Thank you.
Ben?
Thank you. Yes. So as part of the process to ensure that we meet our statutory duty, we have consulted with our legal teams, and their view was that some of the local authority responsibilities that don't sit with the planning authority function that the Planning and Transportation Committee cover sit with this committee. As referenced previously, the waste management of the square mile, environmental health services of the square mile, all are relevant to achieving and meeting that duty, in such that we set policies and objectives to ensure that they are considerate of nature and nature conservation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this paper? If not, this is a decision paper. Can I see those in favour, please? Any against? Thank you. So we can register that. Moving on to item number 5 on your agenda, climate-driven health risks, vectors and vector-borne diseases. And this is Tim Monday to introduce. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So this follows work that we're doing under our climate action strategy, looking at the resilience of the square mile and other duties. We have been working with our public health team to understand particularly the risk associated with pests and diseases, and focused on vectors and vector-borne diseases. And we're bringing it to you today because of its relevance to various duties that sit with the Port Health and Public Protection team. So I'm going to be passing over to my colleague Sam, Sam Murphy, who will introduce further.
Thank you. So I'm just going to provide a very brief overview summary of this topic. So for those who aren't aware, vectors are specific types of animals that will then carry these vector-borne diseases with them. So the most common ones that we've identified that are relevant for the city are mosquito species and tick species. So this is we've classed it as a climate sensitive risk, and so there are many sort of drivers of climate change that will then be impacting how these will establish in in the UK and in London, and there's a lot within our ability, as we'll go into, that we can kind of do to kind of monitor and prevent establishment, and then deal with the effects of that when that does happen. So we've identified, as part of our horizon scanning report, 4 major risks under this vector-borne diseases category. So 2 of those are mosquito species, and 2 of those are ticks. So as I was saying, vectors are increasingly impacted by climate change. So these main factors that affect this are extreme weather and rising temperatures, and changing and unpredictable seasonal shifts. So lots of these have impacts on how suitable the breeding conditions are, and eventually whether establishment is possible for these species. There are also other factors that affect this, such as population growth and land use change, as well as other adaptations to climate that we will want to implement that could also increase the suitability of vector breeding grounds, such as infrastructure like blue or green roofs in cities. So there's a lot that we're already doing on this issue across lots of areas, including in Port Health and Environmental Services. So we're working in the Port Health Authority as part of our food and feed imports and inspections teams. We also do some mosquito surveillance and monitoring, and feed into wider national programs that are run by UK HSA. There is an aspect of this that covers public protection, as well as our open spaces and natural environment too, who also are dealing with this risk at the moment. Part of what we've covered in the paper is about the principles of a One Health approach, which is a WHO recognised approach to dealing with many of the risks of climate change, which includes vector-borne diseases. So this is looking at the health of humans is interlinked with the health of our animals and our environment. And so I think it's something that has been identified as bringing into all levels of decision making, and identifying that we're not working in isolation, and we're actually part of this wider system. So that's why we originally took this paper to the Health and Wellbeing Board, and why we're bringing it now to Port Health and Environmental Services. And these are the proposals which we've taken to Health and Wellbeing and are now bringing to this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this paper? Marianne?
Just going to ask one question. I think at the end it said that there was no financial impact, but you're suggesting training and capacity building and resilience planning. So I suggest there's a cost attached to that, or is that within budgets? I'm just keen to ensure that if we have proposals and a strategy, that it is fully funded so we can carry out the training. Thank you.
Do we have an answer to that, please?
Yes. So the financial implications are based on the what's arising from this paper itself. Particular training we would perhaps try to provide in-house using the expertise that we do have. Anything beyond that, we would need to look to come as a result of another paper, or requesting further funding through the usual budget setting process.
Gavin Steadman.
So, Chairman, perhaps I could just give a bit of an explanation for the Port Health and Public Protection Services. You would have heard me talk about biosecurity and infectious disease control as part of our wider duties. There is no additional cost implications for us, because these are the duties that we've had and we will continue to undertake as part of our programme of work, whether that be in our ports, whether that be in the Square Mile, or whether that be at the Heathrow Animal Reception Centre, and even the cemetery and crematorium. So there's no cost implication for us. That work will continue as part of a training, monitoring programme and engagement with the Climate Action Team.
Thank you. And any other questions or comments on this paper? Okay, not seeing any. This is a decision item. Can I see those in favour? Any against? That is agreed. Okay, so moving on to item number 6, This is the Circular Economy Framework first year progress report. Joanna Leyden to introduce. Joanna.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce the first year progress report for the City of London Corporation's Circular Economy Framework, which we launched in January last year to help position the Square Mile as a circular city by 2040. The report reflects a foundational year focused on building the systems, culture and partnerships needed to embed circular thinking across our own operations and across the wider Square Mile. Over the past 12 months, we have moved firmly beyond a traditional waste and recycling approach and begun to integrate circular economy principles into how we design projects, procure goods and services, support our residents and influence business and development. Key achievements from the year include expanding food waste services to over 1,300 additional households, completing an independent review of our internal waste arrangements, which identified some major opportunities for improvement, securing some funding for a library of things, which will be going into the Barbican Library later this month, and embedding some new sustainability design standards across our capital projects. Through our participation in the Romulus construction pilot, we've helped to avoid almost 140 tonnes of waste on a major city project, demonstrating the scale of environmental impact achievable when reuse is prioritised early, as well as learning valuable lessons from key stakeholders in the construction industry, which we can apply to our planning processes and guidance. Engagement has also been a strength this year with staff networks, resident workshops, repair events, and a successful 2040 Reimagined event, which we helped to build awareness and momentum. The report also acknowledges the challenges, particularly around improving quality of data, supporting behaviour change and strengthening our ability to measure the financial impacts of the circular economy. And these will all be core priorities for 2026, alongside continuing to work to deepen circularity across our waste services, procurement, project management and the built environment. So in summary, the first year we have laid some strong foundations. The coming year will focus on scaling this work, improving consistency and helping to ensure the City Corporation and the Square Mile continue to advance towards a more resilient, resource efficient and circular future. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this paper? It's an information paper. Layla Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Could you please tell us a bit more about how this relates to the built environment and again, the planning process? I see there's paragraph 7, which is which mentions the embodied carbon plan, et cetera, but what does this actually mean in practice for what the Planning and Transportation Committee does and decides? Thank you.
So the circular economy framework is kind of cross-organisational. So one of the key elements is working with the planning team. So we work with the sustainability planning policy team to look at how we can embed more circular practices at planning stage. So all major applications have to complete a circular economy framework, but we're kind of looking to how we can elevate that a little bit more. So within the city plan, for example, they've put the retrofit first approach in. And so we're working with the planning team to kind of create a bit more of a baseline and monitor that data, because at the moment we're advising it and we're getting that information through at planning stage, but we want to see that continuation of projects and see the delivery of circularity. So we play our part in trying to help capture that data.
Thank you. Any other questions on this paper? Not seeing any. That is an information paper, so we will move on to item number 7, which is the simpler recycling legislation briefing. And this is Joanna and Kira to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce this briefing on the City's preparations for the new simpler recycling legislation, which comes into force on the 31st of March 2026. This report is to update members on the actions we have taken to ensure the City is fully compliant with the new requirements. Under the legislation, all residents in England must receive collections of food waste, paper and card, dry mixed recyclables, residual waste, and when requested, garden waste. While the City already provides most of these services, only around 60% of our residential properties received food waste collections as of September 2025. The remaining 40% presented significant space and access challenges. In November, food waste collections were rolled out to 1,385 additional properties, with the remaining 765 scheduled before the end of this month. The city has received £184,000 in government grant funding to support this rollout, covering both capital and revenue costs. Garden waste will also be available to residents on request through an on-demand service. This will run initially as a free trial to assess uptake and viability. By 2027, a flexible plastics collection will also be added. Early data shows a strong positive impact from the expanded services. Since the rollout in November, food waste tonnages have increased significantly year on year, supporting our wider recycling performance and contributing to the city's circular economy framework and climate action strategy. In summary, the actions set out in the report ensure full compliance with the new legislation, improve service equity for residents across the square mile, and support the City Corporation's environmental objectives. Members are asked to note the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Kira. So whilst this is an information report, we felt it was important to bring it to members' attention as it's basically a new statutory obligation for this committee. Any questions or comments? John Edwards.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got just a question about your statistics, because there are some residents who may not have an official collection to their own home, but are using a neighbouring building's facilities. So I'm wondering whether your statistics may be somewhat pessimistic, and there may be some people who are actually taking advantage of food recycling, but you don't know about it because they're actually using a bin in a neighbouring building.
Joe, did you want to comment on that one?
Can do. That they may well be doing that, but we need to ensure that perhaps they shouldn't necessarily be doing that. We need to make sure that the services that are provided, that all residents have the correct services provided.
John, have you been sneaking into the Barbican again using their facilities? John Foley.
I was very interested the other day with the BBC News that Tower Hamlets is now the lowest in London, and so I went through all the figures for each council, and I was a bit dismayed to see that we're now lower than Islington, Camden, Lambeth, Southwark. We're about the same as Haringey. We've gone down from about 35% in 2015-16. We're about 27 now. It was interesting to see how many councils are way above us. For example, Bromley and Ealing, 50%. But my question really is about, is there anything we can do to bring to our residents and to businesses how we can improve this figure? I know in our residential block, some people are just not very responsible about how they get rid of their ordinary waste and also their food waste, and sometimes they go in the wrong bags. So I am concerned that we're not really getting the message out to the people in the city about what they can do. I was very interested to read the whole of the DEFRA report, and I thought in a way it makes it rather complicated some matters rather than making this simpler. So this actual the summary that we've got here, I think is simpler than the one that's on the DEFRA on that website. And I just wondered if we can. I don't think we're going far enough with recycling. There are certain things that we don't recycle yet that I think we should. That's for another time. But is there anything that we can do as a committee or as the corporation to help people to understand the importance of recycling? Thank you.
Okay, before I come back, Simon, did you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. It was more a clarification on the current position in terms of what's the current frequency of collections from each residential property. Reading this literally, there's 6 collections a day from each property, and I'm not sure that's what it's trying to say. So I just wanted to clarify what the actual frequency of collections is. Thank you.
Okay, Joanna, I'll come back on that.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, frequency of collection, just to answer that one quickly first. Yeah, all residents receive 6-day-a-week collection of general waste and mixed recycling every day apart from Sunday. Yeah, mainly due to the massive space constraints we have. We don't want to ensure that we are are collecting and we don't have a buildup of waste, it is something that we will be looking at in the future. And food waste is 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then to your points around recycling rates, yes, we are very aware that they have dropped, and it is something that we are working on to improve. I think when you look at some of the other boroughs, we don't have kind of the same amount of like green space and stuff like that, so there is less kind of recycled content to collect. The weight of material, etc., has got lighter for recyclables, but it's definitely something we're looking to improve. So Kira and her team have put together a recycling improvement plan, and we're looking to do almost like a relaunch of services over this year, go in and refresh every single bin store within the city, because I think some element of that of making sure signage is correct and that they are relatively pleasant places to go and dispose of waste, I think is really important. So simple fixes like that I think we'll look to improve. And then there are a number of engagement events. So we run a lot of repair workshops, we run our give and take days across the city to try and engage residents to kind of move waste up that waste hierarchy. So I think although recycling rates are really important and something we will continue to monitor, one of the key things we want to look at is waste reduction as well. So how can we are seeing a steady decline of waste reduction per household, and that's something that we want to continue to grow and develop, because I think that's a key metric as well as just traditional recycling rates. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So next I've got Tim Butcher, then Vasiliki Manta.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to just explore a bit more the green waste, paragraph 11, page 166. We're being forced to introduce the green waste collection service, and it is a chargeable service. I'm concerned that we should be offering a free service at this current moment in time, bearing in mind the pressure on city fund. It would be better, I would venture to suggest, that we should start by charging for it, because there is nothing worse than trying to introduce charges at a later date. Having come from a different council out in the county, I can tell you how difficult it was to introduce the green waste charge. We had to do it, otherwise we would have run into difficulty with our funds. So I would ask officers to look again at this. It is, and I just want for a clarification, I'm sure I'm right about this, it is to be done with the normal bulky waste collection, which my understanding is we do charge for. He's nodding, yes. So if we charge for that, it would be wrong, in my judgment, not to charge for this. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I'll take that first. Joe.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it is a really good observation, and obviously it's up to the local authority to determine if they do charge for it. Many local authorities do, because it is a significant cost to them. I think at this point, we are, I don't need to remind anyone on this committee how unique we are in terms of our property makeup and how many gardens we have. We just don't know what the uptake is going to be, and it could be that we have half a dozen collections a month, for example. So what we are asking is, we think we can resource that or do those collections within current resources at the moment, but we need to determine how many people use it. There may be a case for going back to DEFRA, for example, and saying, look, we only have 6 collections a month, therefore it's actually completely unviable for us to be providing this service. But again, in order to come to a charge, we need to determine how much it is costing us. So what we're saying, we're asking to do this as a trial for 6 months to determine what the uptake is, to determine what the usage of it is, and then we can come back to this committee with that information, and members can make a decision on there then if they are willing to charge or want to put in place a charge for it. But at the moment, like I said, we just don't know what that cost might be. It might be completely nominal, it might be a huge amount.
Thanks. If I can just follow up on that, if we were to charge, would we be restricted to cost recovery or not?
Yes.
Okay, and therefore, as we have had received grant funding to cover it, if we did discover that that grant funding covered our costs, would that make it impossible to charge, or could we charge and use that money for other purposes?
The grant funding does not cover garden waste,
right? Okay.
Because it's optional and chargeable.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Tim, you can come back at that point.
Just come back on that. If we charge for the bulky waste, I see it is illogical not to charge for people who request the green waste. We're effectively providing a subsidy. You already told us that the 180 odd thousand from the department doesn't cover the green waste, so therefore it is a direct cost to the city fund bottom line. I don't think it's right, and I think that we should introduce the same charge as the bulky waste and then review it in 6 months, and I think we should do that now. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Vasily is next, but I'll take Simon if it's on this specific point.
Thank you, Chair. And to Deputy Bush's point, do we have any view of the incremental cost of the garden waste collection? Since you said it's not covered by the grant, there's presumably some fixed costs associated with it. If that's being spread across a very small number of people actually using the service, it could end up disproportionately expensive. So the question is, do we have a view of what that cost would be?
And just before, Hugh, is your question on the same point? Okay, go ahead.
Given that our intention or the proposal to absorb it within existing resources is based on the expectation that take up will be very low, if after 6 months we might find that we're right, if after 1 month we're absolutely swamped, can we review at that point and start introducing charges, or at least stop offering it for free? Chairman.
And then I'll take John Edwards' one if it's on this specific point, and then I'll come back to Joe.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, it seems odd that we're going to this depth when most people just have a few plants on their balconies. So why don't we just put a bin next to the existing bins in St Bunyard House and the one in Golden Lane and let people just carry their rubbish? The only time we have a lot of rubbish to carry is Christmas trees, and that's already a free service anyway. You bring it to Barbican. Most people could put the garden waste in the bag and walk with it, because it's not like you're trimming a hedge. All you're trimming is changing your plants once a year in spring and out of your balcony. You can carry it to a bin, which you leave for us, in addition to the closed bin and electric bin and Bunyard House and Golden Lane, and not have a collection at all.
Right, now I'm going to just take Marianne if it's on this very specific point, and then I'll come back. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to ask, what are we going to do to recycle the garden waste? I assume that our own parks and gardens recycle most of the waste, and we would be adding this household garden waste to that facility, so it's reusable and recyclable. And therefore the cost would be much less than actually removing bulky waste such as washing machines and dishwashers, which sometimes have a charge attached. You've got to take them to the dump. So garden waste isn't as expensive, I would assume, to move as much as household furniture and washing machines and fridges. I should think at the moment people are just probably putting it in their bin bags and sticking it in the bin. So it's much better, given that we want to have a recycling economy, to offer this facility. And the best way to fairly charge somebody, if it needs to be charged, is to work out how much it costs. And I think you're quite right, using your strategy of free collection for a set period, so you can work that through, those costs through. So if we do have to charge, it's reasonable, but I think we want to ensure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want people to recycle this green waste rather than just sticking it in their bin bags and getting it collected. So I agree with the strategy that the department.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to sort of close this point, come back to Joe, and the question really is, to round it up, is what discretion do we have? Would it make sense to do what Tim Butcher proposes, to put in a charge now? If not, what discretion do we have to put in a charge should it turn out that the actual costs are higher than we anticipate? And I think the general mood is that we keep this closely monitored in any event to allow it not to get out of hand in terms of costs. But if I can come back to you, Joe, on those points.
I think reasonably we would want to let it run for 6 months as opposed to 1 month. I think we have got the capacity within the bulky waste collection service at the moment. And I don't think it would get out of hand. We previously did do a garden waste trial in, I think, probably 4 years ago now, and the volume was very low. And the decision made by this committee at that time was to not provide one because the volumes were so low. Now we're being asked to look at it again because legislatively we have to. But like I said, I think we have the capacity. If we run it for 6 months, we'll then have a reasonable gauge of the volume, not least because garden waste you tend to get more garden waste in the summer, because that's when people are doing the most gardening, have the most plants, etc. So I think, to your point, Hugh, I think probably a month is a little bit too short to run it to get a gauge of the volume of waste. John, on your point around having separate bins, what we would need to do if that was the case was have one in all of the bin stores, because we could potentially fit them in on estates, but then we wouldn't be providing equitable service across the city. So for example, you could fit them in at the Barbican estate, but if you're in a private block, we couldn't reasonably get another garden waste bin into all of those blocks, and that would significantly increase the cost and the logistics because you'd have to go and check all of those private bins, and that's why we're trying to fit it in with a bulky waste, which is an on-demand service. So that's to your point there. The round is there, it's bookable, there's slots on it, there's capacity on it, and we can make those collections on that basis.
Okay, thanks for that. Now I'm going to come to Vasiliki Mantu, who's been patiently waiting on, I believe, another point.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually about the food waste collections. As you know, in a lot of parts of the city, residents don't have bins, so they leave their waste on the streets. So, and it's massive on Castle Baynard, as you know, which is my ward. And I wanted to know if you've taken into account that there might be vermin, pests, and others if food waste is left there quite a while when people don't comply with the collection times. Thank you, Chair.
Joanna?
Yes, absolutely. We do recognise that as a risk. So we've started a trial with 50 properties of putting food waste bags on street, and that is the solution we are going to look to roll out, but it will be something that we closely monitor. At this point in time, we are asking residents to double bag anything that they're putting out, so we're providing enough sacks for them to be able to do that, and it's something that we'll closely monitor to see if there are any issues. We've been running the trial for about 3 weeks at the most point, and we haven't encountered any problems, and we've been talking closely with our street environment officers as well. They're monitoring the area to make sure to see if there is any problems. But yeah, it's a solution that is quite challenging. As you can sure appreciate, we have the food waste is going out at the moment. It's just going out in black bags, and so we're asking it to go out in a different bag. So we don't foresee there to be too much challenge, but we are working with the likes of London and other pan-London groups on other solutions. But at this moment in time, that's the solution we're going with. Yeah, and just to say, yeah, the time banning is 2 hours, so maximum amount of time that food waste should be out on the street is after that. But that time banning is finished, and for the collection crew to come round, so 2 to 3 hours.
Okay, Tim Butcher.
Chairman, I want to come back on my previous point. Okay. If officers are so reluctant to charge for it at this point, I want this matter to come back to this committee in 6 months' time, with the option to charge at that point in time, and with the fully cost as to how much it cost and how much has been undertaken. I think it's wrong not to charge the same as the bulky waste at the moment, but I can see officers' reluctance. I just don't want to see our streets not cleaned properly next year because of this service. Thank you.
Simon Rose.
Chair, can I ask for clarification on how this is going to be promoted and publicised? Because I imagine within 6 months, people won't even be aware there's a garden waste service. I know there are leaflets and other publicity methods used, but I think it takes quite a while for people to change their behaviours. And if they're used to just dumping their occasional off cuttings from their plants in the ordinary waste, actually persuading people to sign up for a garden waste service, particularly with a fee on top, would be quite a challenge. Thank you.
Okay, so on Tim Butcher's point, I mean, personally, I think it's a good idea to come back in 6 months' time, see what the costs have been, how things are going, and can we have an answer to Simon's question, which is how is it being publicised, Joanna?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the garden waste service, we are aiming to mainly, first off, engage with the gardening groups, I think, across the city. I think there are 4, each estate has a gardening group, and I think they will produce the most amount of waste. So that is one thing. And then we will send communications through kind of newsletters and leaflets to all properties advising of the service. And through our events, we'll have ongoing kind of communication and engagement about the service.
Thank you. Okay, firstly, I'd just like to take an indication as to whether people support Tim Butcher's suggestion that this comes back in 6 months, including a cost evaluation and an option as to whether we charge at that point. Is that agreed? Okay. Any new points before we actually proceed? Well, this is an information paper actually, but we've just taken a decision. Well, we've given a strong indication as to what we would like from officers, and I, as chair, will ensure that happens. But any other new points before we move on? Layla Bolton.
Quick information point. I think Marianne kind of raised the question: where does the green waste from our gardens go?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it goes to Southwark, and it goes through IVC and vessel composting. So any green waste taken from the city will also go to our Southwark depot and get treated in the same way. So yeah, fully recycled.
Simon.
Chair, is there a potential perception issue here that if the city's seen as introducing a garden waste service, and obviously gardens are perceived to be sort of more affluent types of residents, that, you know, in times of austerity and difficult financial settlements, it looks odd to be introducing it, especially as a free service at this point? And does there need to be some messaging, maybe, that it's actually a legislative requirement that we're introducing this rather than something we're doing because we're so wealthy and affluent? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And in general, I know that a comment was made, I think it was by Tim, in relation to the what it's called. So it's simpler as that is the name of the legislation that we are is now our statutory obligation. So we don't get to sort of like change its name. But yeah, a good point from Simon on comms. Joanna, do you want to just answer that briefly, and then I want to move on?
Yeah, we can make sure that that is kind of noted in the comms that it's a legislative requirement. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to move on. We've minuted that we will bring this back in 6 months' time, including looking at an evaluation of charges. But I'm now going to move on to item number 8, which is the regular for information risk management update. And we're not actually going to have a presentation on this, but Joe Hill is available to take any questions. Caroline.
Thank you, Chairman, very much. It's really a question around the identification of new risks on page 172, bearing in mind the impact of war and risks in this area, particularly around border controls and major incidents with, I know we're dealing mainly with UK and EU, but American and UK air bases are now being drawn into the Middle Eastern conflict, and transport hubs are already affected. So I just wondered what reassurance you can give members. I understand we can't talk detail, but what reassurance you could give members for this area in particular, that mitigations are in place. Thank you.
Any other questions before I go to Joanne Hill? Gavin, are you taking this on? You probably didn't see this one coming, but Gavin.
So sure. So certainly in terms of risks and emerging risks, it's something that we are always cognizant of. You know, so this isn't a static document; it is a live document. Risks are live. and their profile of them does go up and down depending on what's happening nationally and globally. In terms of the delivery of our services at the moment, particularly the ones at the border, so Port Health and the Animal Health and Welfare Service at Heathrow, we haven't seen any disruption yet in terms of either food imports through the ports or live animals through Heathrow. We're probably quite early days at the moment, and the hubs are clearly being affected are clearly in the sort of Middle East and that sort of region, and they may be disrupted a bit, but they might find other routes through. So we're not seeing any impact. I don't envisage that we'd have any impact on how we would deliver our services, and particularly if you're looking at the food supply that we receive in our ports, it's unlikely to affect that as well, because we're talking of deep sea from America, South America, Africa, for example, and obviously Europe as a trading port. We haven't seen anything yet, but we are keeping a watchful eye, and if anything does come up, we'll make sure that we adapt. So it's continuing as we are in terms of biosecurity at the border.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Any other questions or comments on this report? Not seeing any. That's an information report to receive, which takes us to item number 9. And I believe we've not had any notification of any questions, so which takes us to any other business. I don't have any other business. Therefore, item number 11 is exclusion of the public. Is that agreed? Item number 12 is to approve the non-public minutes. Can we just wait to see if the live stream is being switched off?